Called this press conference this afternoon to provide you with an update on the Hard Rock collapse, as you are no stranger to. And of course, the residents of our city, more importantly, the families, have been tremendously impacted by this disaster. Businesses in the area, all of us have felt the trauma associated with this collapse. I'm here today, as I mentioned, to give you an update. The last plan that was submitted to the city of New Orleans, and we've made that known to you, calling for a traditional demolition, that last plan stretched that timeline out to really over a year, almost more than a year. And that created safety concerns as a result of that timeline. Safety concerns not only for me as the mayor of the city, but also, of course, Chief Tim McConnell, who has been the lead on this since day one. But joined also with these concerns was the insurer of the site. Earlier this week, I had the opportunity to meet with ownership, to meet with the insurer, the representative who flew to the city of New Orleans. And with that, we discussed, and they brought forth a new proposal for the demolition of the site. And that new proposal is one that I am going to support 100% with the leadership of Tim McConnell, our superintendent, the insurer, and also the family at this time. We are going to revert back to implosion of the site as being necessary to ensure public safety, as well as being aligned with a timeline that is more suitable for the city of New Orleans, for the family and families, for the businesses and residents who have all been greatly impacted. The city of New Orleans has been unzipped, without a doubt, as it relates to this collapse. The grave concerns that we had relative to the unstable structure was the need to, the initial plan calling for to stabilize it by putting up joists, and over close to 100 individuals would need to do that work inside the building. That is unstable. Putting more people at risk, I cannot live with that and will not support that. So I have with me this afternoon, standing with me, is Mr. David Griffin, whose company, D.H. Griffin, who was instrumental in the initial stabilization of the site with the 2 cranes, right, and bringing those cranes down. That provided more stability to the site, but of course it remains unsafe. I also have, of course, our Chief Tim McConnell, who has consistently been the lead, and I have my Deputy CAO, Ramsey Green, who is Deputy CAO of Infrastructure for the City of New Orleans. So D.H. Griffin will be managing the controlled implosion of the site, and we are more than confident that they will be able to deliver results that are safe. I met with the families of our victims and talked with them this week prior to coming to you and making this public. I thought that it was very important. As I've always stated, one of my top priorities is getting the remains of our people who are still in the building. And as I was thinking about this last night, I just have to say this, because we always talk about Quinn and even Jose. But I said, I haven't mentioned Anthony in a mighty long time, and Anthony was one that we were able to pull his body and also provide his family, not only with his body, but with a respectful funeral and laying him to rest. And that just brought back memories of not only attending that funeral, but it brought it back in a way that, again, keeps me aligned with the families that have truly been impacted by this collapse. But in consultation with our public safety leaders, I am supporting the demolition of the adjacent buildings that will need to come down. And this will be provided and moving forward by an order issued by our Superintendent of Fire, Tim McConnell, when that time comes. But make no mistake about it, and even as the family mentioned to me, one said that it was bittersweet. Bitter because when you think about a traditional demolition, it lended itself more to picking the building apart, and they were thinking about their loved ones that still, in the building. But sweet for them because the timing has been cut down and will be cut down tremendously for the remains of their people coming on back to their families. So bittersweet in that manner. But in regards to this implosion, controlled implosion, again being the safest and one that has garnered the support, not only of me, of the insurer, of the ownership, and of Chief Tim McConnell. And now the families, as well as Governor John Bell Letwards, and I did reach out to our governor on yesterday. So we are all aligned in this regard, as you saw us unified during the collapse 3 months ago. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to our Superintendent Tim McConnell, who will address you. I will then bring up Mr. Griffin to address you, and then we will move forward with questions so that we can kind of speak to some of your concerns that you may have for clarity. So with that, Chief, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You've repeatedly heard me say when we had switched back in November from the implosion that was being talked about then by a different contractor to the conventional demolition of picking the building apart, just how dangerous this was. The day we announced that, we talked about it. Putting hundreds of people in there for thousands of hours to get a building that's very unstable shored up, and then the timeline increasing to where this puts us into next year, to 2021, is where we are now with that building. It's just unacceptable. All throughout hurricane season, that dangerous building will be standing there, and make no mistake about it, it is not necessarily the timeline that drives this in any way. It is the safety of humans, and to lose lives, additional lives, trying to get this building stabilized is really unacceptable. And it got to a point where the ownership came to us with a different plan, and we were very happy to see that, and we believe and know from experts that this is the safest way to do it. Based on inspections of the building conducted by engineers, repeated inspections, the building does require a full demolition. A review of the different plans that have been submitted that y'all have been aware of and we've talked about every time there's been a change. This is absolutely the safest way to take the building down. And the benefit of having the shorter timeline is obviously something that will help. We have hurricane season on June 1st. And so the goal is to do this safely and quickly and allow the demolition to be done and get the recovery of victims. And once again, I always talk about the recovery of evidence, but we've always talked about life safety being number one, and this gets us there.
Thank you, Chief. Now, Mr. Griffin, will you just come and just share a little bit?
Yeah, my name's David Griffin, president of the D.H. Griffin Companies. Our company's been in the demolition business for over 60 years. We specialize in large-scale, complicated demolition projects throughout the United States. Our company was involved in the World Trade Center cleanup after the terrorist attacks of 9/11, and we'll be working hand in hand with the ownership group, the City of New Orleans, and all related parties to get this project done safely and turn it back over to the City of New Orleans.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me here, Madam Mayor.
I appreciate that. And just to kind of speak to some of the things that may be kind of going on, in your head and mind. Ms. LaToya, you want to take us through Q&A?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Give us a depiction of what it might look like for other buildings in that area that are near there, other than the adjacent buildings that will eventually also be demolished.
Okay, so in regards to the surrounding area, it does speak to, again, this implosion being the safest, because we can ensure that there will be no people in the surrounding area during the time of demolition and when that occurs. And so if we want to speak a little bit more to that, Chief, you want to add to that?
Yes. We'll be working just as we've done with each of the iterations that have come out. We have our engineers as consultants that are on board that will vet the plan and make sure that it's safe. But the owners brought these folks in because they have the expertise and they believe they can do this without affecting any other structures. And that's why we're happy to see someone come in who had the amount of expertise in this field and the years of experience and the hundreds of buildings that they've given us. So we asked for, I think we've talked about it, I know we've talked about it before, we've asked for the credentials of the people every time this has happened. We asked these folks, they were given the same questions everybody else was given. It proves to us you're qualified, and we've gotten back so far has made us feel very comfortable that they can do what they say they can do. We would hope that no other buildings would be affected. And obviously, they'll give us more confidence in that before we get to the 0 hour.
Right, and proper insurance will be, taken out as it relates to the contractors doing that work in an upward of $50 million. And of course, working with the governor of Louisiana as it relates to immunity as it may involve and really will not involve, but making sure that the insurance is really looking at in the implosion area. So much like we had to go through when we did the initial demolition, we will do really the same, but making sure that that area is safe, that it's protected. We will have the environmental task force out there as we did, before. We will have to do sound. We did that as well. Was the
Monitoring of sound
the
and
monitoring of sound, monitoring of air. All of those things will be put in place, once again. And because we've been here before in that regard, we believe and we know that we're prepared to move forward with this implosion, controlled implosion, and immediately after being able to move with extraction, and that is securing the remains of our individuals, who are still in the building.
Catherine Mazzone, Fox 8. And actually, Madam Mayor, I was just going to ask about that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe that this implosion will make extraction more difficult?
Well, I think that one of the things is that it's how we respond to that. One, prep, and they've done this before in terms of marking areas where we know where, in the areas where our people are, so that it will make the extractions much easier. And this is not new to Mr. Griffin's firm and those who will be working on site providing that service to us. So I'm confident, and I have assured the families that we will get their remains, and that will be the next step that's tied to the implosion. It's removing our people, which has always been my top priority. Chief, you want to speak to that? Anything you need to add?
I think you said it very well, Madam Mayor, but we have, it's our challenge, our assignment to make sure that we get their remains. It's not a choice that we have. We will get them, and we have the proper resources to do that, and we have professionals that will be on board to ensure that we get every remain back to the families where they belong.
So what is the time frame of this implosion, and when the implosion happens, how long will it take to clean up?
Okay, so, and then I'll bring you in here. Now, what I know as it relates to the time frame for the implosion, we're looking at mid-March. Now, there's activity surely that will begin prior to that. We still have the crane that's in the ground that could be removed. We have even debris in the area, but we're looking at mid-March, and you can get me straight. You need to get me straight on that.
Yeah, right now, like I say, we're going to be over the next several days. We're continuing to work on some of the plans. We'll be getting you more information in the coming weeks as we narrow that down. And like the Madam Mayor said, we're looking at mid-March sometime, and it'll probably be sometime, I'd say, between mid-March and end of the March. Mm-hmm. That would kind of be the time frame we're working in right now. And as we get further along, we'll be giving you updates as we get closer to the time. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about in our mind when, how we're a city of things that's always coming, right, and events and planning. But in that time frame, you have wanting to see this done before French Quarter Festival, before Jazz Fest, kind of after Mardi Gras, of course, but in that time frame. After they'll be able to reduce the footprint of the site and just begin to remove debris from the site, and it will be, it will come down.
How long will it take for that debris to be removed, you think?
Oh, that can take some weeks. That can take some time.
3 months.
2 to 3 months.
Safe to say 2 to 3 months.
But when that debris removal happens, it will be collapsed to the construction site, and so it'll be manageable, but definitely not keeping the city unzipped. Traffic flow patterns can be resumed. Businesses, although we were able to get most of them open, but we still have 2 that have not been able to open and are really taking a pretty significant hit, as well. But the timeline speaks to their ability to get back up and running sooner rather than later, with the debris removal happening simultaneously.
WWL-TV.
It's only been about 3 weeks since the developers submitted that plan. I think it was Christmas Eve with
Around
the
that.
extended timeline. And now we're saying like this is the safest way. Has this always been the safest way, or has
Yes.
something changed, an inspection or some movement with the building in these last 3 weeks
that very
to make
quickly.
this the safest way?
Yeah, well, implosion has always been the safest way because it prevents individuals from being, around the site.
For months on end being in that building,
Yeah.
trying to put up the shoring. If you go back and look, when we switched in before Thanksgiving, I think it was about the week before Thanksgiving, from implosion, which ownership had been looking at, to conventional. At that press conference where we announced it, I said, make no mistake, this is way more dangerous. So this has been all along, we've said it. But it was we were looking at the different methodologies. And, once again, as we found out more and more as the contractors that were going to do the work came in, and the concerns about what it would take to do that and the amount of time people would be in there, and the instability of the building. Even with the shores, to take it down, someone's got to go in and take those out.
So it's always
that's-
been the safest.
Makes it more dangerous. This has always been the safest.
But when
And
you
we've
think
made that
about
clear.
thinking about the bodies in there, though, that traditional picking apart demolition just seemed to be the best option, but it's not. It's just not.
The advocate, Jeff Adelson.
Well, and if you could expand on that a little bit, what changed for you all where you were willing to allow the developers to go through the longer process when they proposed picking it apart piece by piece, but now it's just been decided?
Because the contractor, but the amount, well, the contractor who would have to send his employees in to create or stabilize the building with the use of joists, that would mean over 100 employees that would have to do that work, came to the point that he would not sign off on the job because of the safety risk, putting his people at risk of losing life. And also with the understanding of what that will take. Again, seeing the plans and seeing all these, lines about the joists, it's like, oh my God, this is massive. And if you can go and do all of that, get my people out of there. That was my initial reaction. But when the contractor came back and pretty much would not sign off, then that spoke volumes, of course. And the bottom line is when the insurer has pause, that meant the most to me, because I did not want to have this building in our city, the city unzipped, which could potentially be over a year plus. Unacceptable. So in looking at the bigger picture, and I have to look at all factors in determining what I will support. But I support this plan along with the superintendent of fire, along with the not only the ownership, but along with the insurer, along with the governor, along with the family, all parties who are attached to this. We're all in agreement that this is the best thing for the city of New Orleans to do at this time, and we're doing it.
implosion and a implosion. Can you kind of explain the difference, maybe, Mr. Griffin?
Yeah, he can.
To tell us what the difference is and why that distinction is being made.
And
Only-
it's always
you know,
controlled, though.
It's always
It's
controlled.
always
You never
controlled.
take a building down with an uncontrolled explosion. But, the professionals, so you try to